Hey, scrappy people, it's Traci Reed here today, coming at you with a memory planner's layout using my simple memory planner template number 4 with Cocoa Daisy products, but I need to edit this template a little bit before I'm ready to print it and get it ready for Cocoa Daisy. So I have a text box here for almost every single one of these photos, and these are my everyday selfie love photos, so I often have very long stories that go along with these photos. So I need to edit these text box, plus I don't need this extra photo spot, so I'm going to start by deleting this extra photo. It is totally okay to edit templates to make them work for you. Obviously, I designed this template and I'm still editing it, so it's totally fine. I also need more room than this journaling block provides for this photo, so I'm going to delete this journaling block, and I'm actually going to duplicate this journaling block and move it over here. So I'm going to select the journaling layer, the journal block layer by holding down Command, and the journal mat layer by clicking and holding down Command again, and then just Command or Control J to duplicate, and then I can drag it down here, and it's ready to edit. And I actually already have my journaling on my clipboard, so I'm just going to use my text tool and double click Command or Control A to select all, and then V to paste my journaling. And next, I don't love how smushed this looks, so I'm actually going to delete this journaling box altogether, and I'm going to edit the journaling box to take up the whole space of the calendar grid below it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the journaling, and then I'm going to click on the journal block that is associated with that journaling, and I'm just going to hit the delete key and then the delete key again to delete the journaling block mat. Select this journaling again. I'm going to zoom in so I can see better. And then if I double click, or I can just click in the box anywhere, I can now edit this text box and drag it and make it bigger. So I don't want it to go edge to edge. Nice and centered is good. And now that it's bigger, I can space out the text a little bit more with this dialog box right here. So if I go to 7, it's too small. If I go to 8, it's too big. So let's try 7.5. Too small a little bit, so 7.75, perfect. All right, so I've done that. Add journaling for this photo, and this journaling space is not big enough, but I think an edge-to-edge journaling space will be big enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this journaling area, and I'm going to come in here on my Instagram because that's where I keep my journaling, and I'm going to find this photo. Then I'm just going to copy and paste it from Instagram. You can see it's kind of long. Now I'm going to duplicate this journaling box by hitting Command or Control J, and I'm going to move it over to here, and I'm probably going to rearrange these, but let's add in my journaling first. V, delete these emojis. So obviously this still isn't big enough. It's almost big enough. Let's see. Oh yeah, it's almost big enough. So we're gonna make it work by changing the line spacing down to, let's see if 7.5 is small enough. Perfect. Okay, but what I don't love about this now is that I've got journaling on either side of this, and it is too much journaling. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete the title placeholders, which I would be doing anyway. And then I'm going to move this journaling up here. And now I don't love this journaling on top of the other journaling. So let's move this one over here, still associated with that photo because it's right next to it. So that's good. And I think I like that because this journaling gets separated from this journaling by the journal block. Now I have somewhere to add titles and stickers, and I am ready to add my background in and print and move this over into real life. So let's talk about how we do that background. So what I need to do is I need to slip a background in between the grid and the very back. And if I turn all of these on, that would work just fine, but they are just plain white, so they take away the actual grid of the calendar. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to merge them all, and that creates a place for me to command click the icon on the layer thumbnail, and that gives me the marching ants, which is a selection exactly around the calendar portion of this grid. So now I can click on the grid and I'm going to unlock the layer. And then if I hit Command or Control J to create a new layer, it's going to create a new layer just from my selection, which is the grid itself. So now I can delete this layer, and my lines will come back, and then I can slip a paper in between the grid and the background. And I'm going to use the digital paper included in the Cocoa Daisy printables. And it is a PDF, and it is not quite large enough for the actual 8.5 by 11 paper background here, but I can still make it work. So I'm going to make sure it opens up at 8.5 by 11 inches, 300 resolution, and I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to take my rectangular marquee tool and I'm going to draw just around the actual paper portion of this page. Command or Control C to copy. Go back to my layout, and I'm going to click on this very bottom layer, and I'm going to hit Command V or Control V to paste. You can see it's a little bit small, but we're just going to stretch it out and make it work. I normally don't like increasing the size of digital files, but this is small enough that it's not going to matter. And you can see it is almost perfectly the size of 1/2 when I increase the size, but I need it to be on both sides, so I'm going to hit Command or Control J to duplicate it, and then I'm going to move the second one over here. And then you can see that we have a lot of floral going on here that I don't actually want. I want the florals to be in the corners here and not in the center. So we're going to change that. These calendar grids is that they cover up so much in the middle here that we can steal design from the middle and move it around in these edges, and no one will ever know that it's copied. So I'm going to turn off, actually, let's merge first. So I'm going to merge these two layers so that it's one layer. And then I'm going to turn off all of these layers, all of my photos and journaling. So it's just the grid and the background. And if I turn off the grid itself, you can see that there's so much wood in the middle here that I can use to cover up this with my clone tool. So I'm going to get out my clone tool, and I'm going to make it nice and large. And I need to be on my actual background layer. This should be good. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to Alt and click, which will define my clone point from right here in the middle where this grid is going to cover it up. And then I'm going to move my cursor directly up this line so that the line is not crooked. And I'm just going to clone this way. And you can see that because I'm just pulling from directly below the point itself that I'm covering up, you can't even really tell that I'm cloning anything at all. So in the center here, you are going to be able to see. So I'm going to come back to that, and I'm just going to cover this up instead. And instead of going below, I'm going to go above, and I'm going to move down, line up the line, and duplicate. Oops, that didn't work. Let's try again. All right. Okay, so now we just have the floral in the corner. Oops, we're cloning the floral here. Actually, this center part doesn't matter, but just because I'm a little bit OCD about this. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to turn the grid back on now. You can see we can still see in the center here, and I'm just going to make this one big wood beam right in the middle. So I'm going to turn this off again. Oops. not that one, this one. I'm gonna turn this off again, and I'm going to clone right from the middle of a piece of wood here. So I'm gonna click right in the center, turn this back on, and use that. Oh, let's do it this way. If I line up the line here, then I should be able to, yep, there we go. Now I don't have that crooked line. But I do have an extra line, so we're gonna have to clone that line out. It's okay though. And then we can just take from right here in the middle and clone down. And now we have a paper. Oops. You know what, I'm just going to clone out this line that I created rather than try and move the line. So I'm just going to command click from the line right here, move it up and arrange it. There we go. You can even do the same here, even though it is covered up, just for that little bit of OCD. Okay, and now when I turn the grid back on, I have my background just how I like it, and I'm ready to print just as it is. These as 8.5 by 11s with the grid and the background, but I also want to have the journaling that is directly on the grid to print as well. That way I don't have to print it separately. So I'm just going to turn everything back on and then turn off what I don't want to print. So I just want to print the journaling that's directly on the grid. So that is this journaling. I'm going to move it to the top so I know. This journaling, move it to the top. Move it to the top. Okay, so those are the only journalings that I want to print directly on the grid. So I'm going to turn everything else back off, except for the grid and the background. Make sure everything is nice and centered in the grid before I print. And now it's really simple from here. I'm just going to merge everything for the sake of ease. You don't actually have to do this, I just like to. So I'm gonna hit Command-Shift-E or Control-Shift-E to merge all of the things that are visible. And then you just come in here and go Command-Alt-C or Command-Option-C, Control-Alt-C to get the canvas size up. You want to change the width to 8.5 and leave the height at 11. And you want to change this anchor point. Right now it's in the center, so if I were to do this, it would crop off both sides. If I put it on the left-hand side here, it'll crop off the right-hand side, all that's left over here. So I want to do that. And then I have just the left-hand side, and I can print from here, just regular like you would print anything. I print on high resolution paper it's like 32-pound copy paper. It's called Bold Digital, and it works really well for printing these backgrounds. And once you've printed this, you can just hit Command or Control-Z and repeat the process, Command-Option-C or Control-Alt-C, 8.5 and 11, and then now you change the anchor point to this side and it will crop off all of the left. So if we hit OK, ta-da! Now we can print from here. Then once we're done with that, we hit Command-Z, and I'm going to hit Command-Z one more time to go back before I merged, and now I can work on printing the other parts of this. In a few different stages. I need to print my photos, I need to print my journaling mats, and I also need to print, I actually don't need to print, I need to set up these journaling block mats for cutting in my silhouette. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on my photos. So I'm going to create a new layer that is letter sized for my silhouette. We don't want it to have a background, so I'm just going to delete it. I'll delete it once I put my photos on here. So what I need to do is select all of my photos, and I'm just going to drag them onto here. It doesn't ruin my template layer at all. It just moves it onto here. So I'm going to put my template layer back up here so I don't lose it. And then I'm just going to center these so that I can move them all together. And I'm going to delete this white background. And then in order to make sure that the silhouette will cut them out for you with these white borders, you need to make sure you stay away from the edges. So I'm just going to set up a really quick print sheet that stays away from the edges so that the silhouette won't have any problem. Oh no, am I going to be able to print them all on one layer? I think so. I think I can do this. I actually have a handy dandy little guide. Since I make stickers, I have a handy dandy little guide to make sure that my silhouette lines fit. You can also create your own as well. Okay, good. See, I kind of have it down at this point, so everything fits except for I'm a little low. Oops. Make sure we stay out of those blocks. Dun, da, da, da. Move this in a little bit. Move this in a little bit. Okay. Now I'm going to create my cut layer. So I'm going to select all of my photos by holding down Shift while I click, Command J to create new layer from all of these photos, and I'm just going to hit Command E to merge them. Then double click to bring up the Layer Styles dialog box. And just a black color overlay. Now I'm going to turn off this, and now you want to save these files as two different files, one as the black outlines for the cut lines. So my computer is recording a video, so it's a little bit slow while it does that. This as a PNG file because that's what it needs to be for the silhouette. And I'm going to give it the name 1B. And then I'm going to turn off the black layer and I'm going to save it again, and I'm going to name this file 1. That way they open up together and it's really easy to keep track of which silhouette lines go with which photo or with which sheet. Now I need to come back to my template and I need to create a print sheet again for the journaling blocks. So I'm going to come back here. I'm going to turn all these off so they don't interfere. I'm going to turn this back on so I can see easily. Now I'm going to merge the journaling to the journaling blocks. And if you run this through your silhouette, it will very easily cut out exactly the right size for your journaling block. I'm going to move this and drag it. It's going to, I have the mats locked to the journaling blocks, so it's going to bring those over too. I can just come in and select them all now and delete them. And then move these so that they can be printed very easily. And repeat the process that I did with the photos. It doesn't have to be aligned or perfect or anything as long as it's in these guides. Turn those off. Select all of them by holding down Shift and clicking, and then Command or Control J to duplicate, Command E to merge, double click, color overlay. Okay, now save. We'll make this 2B, saved as a PNG. Turn this layer off, and this one will be 2, saved as a PNG. And last but not least, the only thing we have left to do is to create a cut sheet for the journaling block. So I'm going to be using these journaling block outlines as a template for actual papers rather than filling them in with digital papers. So what I need is actually a 12 by 12. So I'm going to create a new file that is 12 by 12 because the silhouette mat is 12 by 12. And I'm going to drag these journaling blocks over, and they're going to, again, bring the journaling and everything else with them. And I can just delete that. It's the easiest way to do it. So delete, 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 delete. Okay, so all I need to do now is align these to the same grid that is on my silhouette mat. And the silhouette mat has a 1-inch grid. So all I have to do is make sure that these fit within a reasonable size on this 1-inch grid. So this one is 4 inches by 3-ish inches, but I want to have a little bit more room. So I'm going to make sure that these are centered on 4-inch squares. That way I can cut out a 4-inch piece of paper and I'll put that on my silhouette mat, and it has enough room around the edges in case there's a little bit of an error. I'm going to do that one more time. Delete this journaling mat. And then this one is 2 by 3. So we'll just make sure it fits in a, well, we'll just do 3 by 4 for this one. Then I'm going to merge them all and give them a black color overlay because the silhouette reads the black the easiest. I'm going to save it as 3 as a PNG. Okay, and we are done in Photoshop. So let's move over to the Silhouette software. Okay, so in the Silhouette software, we're going to open up the files that we just created. So go to File, Open, and open them from wherever you save them. I saved them to my desktop so that they would be easy to find. So I'm going to open up 1, 1B, 2, 2B, 3. And we'll open them all up at once. And I'm going to start with 1. The process for 1 and 2 will be the same, so I'll just show you 1. So you go to 1B and you create your, oops, let's make this a little smaller. There we go. You create your trace lines by going over here to the Trace panel. Select Trace Area. Then you click and drag a box around all of these squares. They will turn yellow, and then you hit Trace. Then you can go ahead and delete the black boxes so that you can see the trace lines easy. And I just select them, Command or Control C to copy, go back to 1 and paste with V. You can see that the cut lines go right around the white edges of my photos. Then the last thing that you need to do before you print and send it to the Silhouette is open up the Page Setup panel, come over here to the registration marks, turn them on, and then I like to make them as small as possible. That way I have the most room in the middle to have as much content as I need. So now you can go ahead and print these on photo paper. I use sticker photo paper by Top Color to print my photos. So you can just go ahead and go to your print dialog box and print them and then run them through your Silhouette. You would copy the same process for 2 and 2B, except I would print these on regular letter paper. And then for 3, we actually want to go to Page Setup over here and change the size to 12 by 12. And then instead of having to print any of this, we just want to create the cut lines. So we go to Select Trace Area, draw our cut lines, trace, we can delete these black pieces, and then now we can just send this straight to the Silhouette, which is what I'm going to show you next, and cut out the papers that we want, making sure that we cut out 4-inch circle or 4-inch squares and putting them directly on the Silhouette mat so that they align with these cut files. This one is, of course, 3 by 4, and we can move on from there. Okie dokie, so you can see that I've got my Cocoa Daisy papers taped to my Silhouette mat. Everything else is printed and cut perfectly. So I'm just going to slide this in and run the cut file through this paper. Now, I have to remember that Cocoa Daisy paper is very thick, so I need to make sure that the force is enough to deal with this cardstock. Hopefully it is. Make sure that my blade is long enough. All right, then we can send this through. And it will cut out my squares at the right size. I have to tape mine down because my mat is old and someday I will go to Joann's, but it's such a hike. I guess I could just order one. That's what I should do. I need to order Epson Premium presentation paper too. And we are ready to go. I'm going to reassemble all of my journaling blocks and put down my photos before I start using the Cocoa Daisy kit to scrapbook. So I'm just kind of laying everything out where it goes, and then I will stick it down. I prefer using these simple templates when I am using paper product to scrapbook, because I find that the simple templates lend themselves to being more creative with the paper scrapbooking supplies than some of the other templates do, because it basically just gives you a foundation for your layout, and then you can just go from there and use whatever supplies you have on hand, rather than trying to make the supplies that you have on hand fit the template itself. Now, you could make any of the templates simple just by using them for just the journaling blocks and just the photo templates fairly easily, but I don't know, it feels like a different process to me with the simple templates and paper scrapbooking than the more collaged style templates and hybrid scrapbooking. So I'm going through all of the Cocoa Daisy product, and I'm going to keep this layout fairly simple. Obviously the template is simple, but I do want to add in a lot of fun embellishment, and I'm going to have to add in a lot of titles too. My Everyday Selfie Love prompts, the layouts that I create with them, I like to have the prompts on the photos themselves, and normally I add them in digitally, either like directly on the photo or with digital embellishments. But since I'm using paper scrapbooking supplies with this layout, I decided that I would just go ahead and use the alphabets that are included in the collection. I used the numbers from one of the planner sheets to denote the numbers at the top, and now I'm going to start adding in all of my titles before I really do much else, because I have to work around the size of the letter stickers, and so I don't want to start adding embellishments and not have room for the titles. So I'm just going to start with the titles before I do much else. So I'm adding in titles with all of the different alphabets. They are all green alphabets, which I found really interesting to work with. But there are those two tall, skinny alphabets, and then there's that one right there on the right-hand side that's sort of a normal blocky alphabet with both upper and lowercase letters, and I'm going to be using all three of them for this layout. Obviously, I'm going to use the smaller alphabets where I need to have a little bit more room for like a longer title. That one says Splurge. So we got Home, Fresh, Splurge. We need Throwback and Sweet. And then the other two titles are actually on the longer side, so I have to approach those differently. I can't really use letter stickers for them because it would be too much room. It would take up too much room and it wouldn't be visually appealing. So instead I'm going to write my titles on these labels and put them at the bottom of the photos instead. Not my favorite. I don't love writing titles on labels, but it works in this instance and I think I like it. It adds a little bit of my handwriting to this otherwise very typewritten layout. Okay, now that I have all of the titles down, the journaling's down, the photos are down, now I can start embellishing the heck out of this spread. I actually don't feel like I need to add too much. First, because there's already a lot going on with all of the type, and then also because of the way that the background worked out with those beautiful florals in each corner. They make such a bold statement that I don't have to embellish much more as far as like florals go and that sort of a thing, because they make such an impact. I'm going to use these little rubber pieces, even though I do like keeping my memory planner spreads as flat as possible. They're fairly flat, they'll work, and I wanted to use them. There's a lot of circles on this spread to combat all of the blockiness of the memory planner layout. So that was kind of the thought process there. I'm going to add in some word strips, some of these stickers from the sticker sheets, and then a couple more florals, and I'm actually going to call it good. You can see how fast it is to get to this place, and it's super simple to finish off the layout with paper products once you have everything printed and ready to go. I feel like I want to add in some more of these florals and call it good. So if you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. I would love to have you. And if you don't already, you can follow me over on Instagram. I'm at Traci M. Reed. All right, thank you.